Cause and effect. This is something that really blows my mind. Like, really blows my mind. Like, cat. Anytime there's any sort of like time travel on any fiction, like I say, nonfiction, I immediately, find so many flaws in it because of the smallest changes of cause and effect, you know. Um, but bringing that into the real world and whatnot is we make the biggest impacts from the smallest effect or smallest gestures. Um, one that comes to mind is there was an instance where if I had excuse me, if I hadn't taken a shower at the precise time that I did, someone would have gotten a hold of me and plans would have been made differently and blah 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 blah. Basically, I traced it back to if I hadn't taken that shower, I wouldn't have been in the right place on the right day because plans would have been changed, plans would have been different. I mean, being able to trace that back to the tiniest changes, the tiniest details have tremendous effects. Cause and effect, cause and effect. It just, we affect others all the time with our every action, our every word, our every deed has an effect. A lot of times they're not noticeable, or they're not significant, or they're not profound. And sometimes those effects are extremely subtle. What we don't think is important at the time can make a huge difference in a person's life. Sometimes later on down the road, I've affected great change in people's lives over the years. And I say this with no arrogance or whatever, but I mean, I've seen it. I've seen the changes. I've seen the effects, and I've even had people tell me the effect that I've had. And I mean, and this is just me speaking from firsthand experience. You know, it's just absolutely amazing. For example, well, here, check out this little video clip from the movie The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This really is a prime example of how I view the tiniest changes in life and how they can have profound effects.
Sometimes we're on a collision course and we just don't know it. Whether it's by accident or by design, there's not a thing we can do about it. A woman in Paris was on her way to go shopping, but she had forgotten her coat. Went back to get it. When she had gotten her coat, the phone had rung, so she had stopped to answer it and talked for a couple of minutes. While the woman was on the phone, Daisy was rehearsing for a performance at the Paris Opera House. And while she was rehearsing, the woman off the phone now had gone outside to get a taxi. Now, a taxi driver had dropped off a fare earlier and had stopped to get a cup of coffee. And all the while, Daisy was rehearsing. And this cab driver, who dropped off the earlier fare and had stopped to get the cup of coffee, had picked up the lady who was going shopping and had missed getting the earlier cab. The taxi had to stop for a man crossing the street who had left for work 5 minutes later than he normally did because he forgot to set his alarm. While that man, late for work, was crossing the street, Daisy had finished rehearsing and was taking a shower. And while Daisy was showering, the taxi was waiting outside a boutique for the woman to pick up a package, which hadn't been wrapped yet because the girl who was supposed to wrap it had broken up with her boyfriend the night before and forgot. When the package was wrapped, the woman, who was back in the cab, was blocked by a delivery truck. All the while, Daisy was getting dressed. The delivery truck pulled away and the taxi was able to move, while Daisy, the last to be dressed, waited for one of her friends who had broken a shoelace. While the taxi was stopped, waiting for a traffic light, Daisy and her friend came out the back of the theater. And if only one thing had happened differently, if that shoelace hadn't broken, or that delivery truck had moved moments earlier, or that package had been wrapped and ready because the girl hadn't broken up with her boyfriend, or that man had set his alarm and got up 5 minutes earlier, or that taxi driver hadn't stopped for a cup of coffee, or that woman had remembered her coat and got into an earlier cab, Daisy and her friend would have crossed the street, and the taxi would have driven by.
Allô, la réception? Oui? Monsieur.
But life being what it is, a series of intersecting lives and incidents, out of anyone's control, that taxi did not go by, and that driver was momentarily distracted. And that taxi hit Daisy. And her leg was crushed.
It's just amazing. And it's the kind of thing that, like, makes my brain feel bigger. You know, it's the kind of awareness that makes me, it's just so huge in my brain. The tiniest things. And on the flip side, the tiniest inactions can have the most profound effect. And I think that's why I'm a big fan of action, of doing, of making a difference, of, you know, not acceding to fear of, you know, oh, what if, you know. I mean, we can what if our actions straight into the fucking ground. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be aware. Absolutely, we need to be aware. We need to, you know, be aware of potential consequences and realize that our actions have weight and merit. But to let that go too far and, you know, beat us into submission or to spook us into inaction, it's just unacceptable. You know, I mean, I'm not perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination. I've sat on my thumbs plenty of times. And I will never be to a point where, you know, I'm completely happy with myself, because that's just not possible for me. That's not to say I'm always a downer. It's just there's always more to learn. There's always growth to be had. There's always lessons to partake in. You know, those things are, you know, an integral part of life. But we are not islands. We are not islands. We have profound effects on the people around us. Sometimes we have absolutely no idea at all what we do and how it affects us, or how it affects others, and us for that matter. It's just amazing. You know, I've had effects on people where I didn't think they were anything particular. Well, not them, but the effect. You know, and what I had done had profoundly meant something to them. You know, and that's a big deal. It's a very big deal. We just need to be aware that our actions and inactions, all of them, carry weight. And they all have merit. We are all responsible, and we need to take responsibility for our actions and inactions as best as we can.